So in ZBrush, we have the tool we saved out earlier, which has all the nice sculpting in it with the correct scale and everything. But as I said before, it doesn't have a clean topology. If you check this out now, it's just garbage. We can't use this for anything. So we need to import the retopologized version. And there are several ways of doing this. One is to simply go to tool import while this is selected. And you really don't want to do this. This will, let's just go here and just put it in here. If you go to head now, it's going to just screw everything up. Sometimes it's going to simply update what we have here and reproject the details, but you really don't want to do this. You want to do this methodically and thoroughly. So the way we do this, the way we reproject details, is by going to the little star guy, duplicate them around as many times as we have subtools. I just do it a couple times. I don't know exactly how many we have. I have like 6 or something like that. So I just duplicate around a couple times. Then I go to import and I find the geometry I just saved out. So yeah, here we have six subtools, so 6 OBJs. So just go to each one of them and just hit import. And here we see the importance of correct naming. Because right now you can see all the subtools here will have the correct naming. You really don't want to be called like PMesh 13 or whatnot. Again, the cleaner your starting point is, the cleaner everything will be down the line. Nice. Also, one thing to be aware of is we need to hide everything now. So the way we can do this is we can simply just hit the eye icon here, which is going to hide everything, which is perfect. The problem is it will hide everything. If you don't know what you're doing, you're going to screw everything up for yourself. Let's say we want to have this guy hidden or hide everything. We want this guy visible and we want the 2 eyes visible, only the hair and the 2 eyes. So we click this guy, we click this visible, and we click this one, and suddenly there's chaos. So if you click the eye here, it's going to make everything visible or everything invisible. Huge problem. So this just means the selection order we have is going mental. So the way we hide, or the way we make something visible, if we're on the layer, or subtool, is specifically just clicking the icon here, or clicking the thumbnail of the model. So we want to do this step by step. First, I do the head, because the head is the most challenging thing to get right. So select the head and select the other head. And so now you can see the scale is identical, but if we isolate this guy, there's nothing here. So the first thing we do here, we want to make sure that everything is on a layer. We don't want to affect this at all unless we have to. So the first thing we do is we store a morph target. If you use my interface, it's just right there. Or if you don't have an interface, it's just there. Morph targets are really nice because you can sculpt here and you can just use the morph brush and you can get back to the original result. So it's kind of like it's just a saved state of the model. Let's undo that. And then we don't want to store morph target yet. Delete morph target. We want to store a morph target once we've subdivided the model up. So you can see this guy here has 1.6 million. So we're going to go up to that level there. And here you can see an issue as well. You see how it's shrinking? When we subdivide this region here will shrink, which is really bad. You don't want this. This is why I'm advocating not using, we're not having holes in a model like this, because this will shrink. Just see how my cursor is there, and now it's just shrunk quite a lot down. The way we can combat this is to use creasing. Let's see, where do we find creasing? We find creasing on the geometry and crease. So just hit crease here, and now it's not going to shrink. Now it's going to stay stationary like this, which is exactly what you want. So if you have an open hole in the model, go to Tool, Geometry, and Crease, and just hit the crease button. So subdivide this up a couple times. So reach 1. Yeah, this is fine. 1.7 million. We don't want to go higher than 1.7 for this because that's pointless. We really don't want that. Just make sure there is no morph target at this point. Apologize for that. And then we store morph targets. And then we make a layer. Layers are really nice in the way that you can do a lot of sculpting, which you can then erase away, and you could do it in a slightly non-destructive manner. Let's say they do have some limitations to them, and they can be really annoying if you don't know what you're doing. But we're just going to use layers for this. Before reprojecting anything, keep a layer. So we're going to call this reproject. So this is something I do a lot in my professional day-to-day. Whenever you're doing retopology, you have to reproject it back. Otherwise, you lost a lot of work. So I'll show you why we make a layer and why we do morph target. Let's say you sculpted something. Let's just sculpt this up. And this is wrong. Like this has been reprojected back on the model. We can now just paint it out using a morph brush. See this? This is nice because we have a morph target before we store the layer. So we have a morph target here, which is saves a copy of the model at this stage here. So this model here has now been saved out as a copy. And if we have a layer here, this is going to blend back into the copy. This is extremely powerful. And this is the way I clean up my models. I reproject onto the layer here. And then I just clean it up using the morph brush. Very handy. So let's reproject it. Go up here and you can alt click between the models or on the model you want. So now I can just click here and alt click and just change the subtool right away. So I'm just going to want to evaluate the various shapes here. So the lips I'm going to have to completely resculpt. That's just a fact. I can try to salvage it, but this entire inner region here is going to have to be completely resculpted. And there are so many discrepancies in this general region, so I'll probably just have to resculpt the entire thing. Same with the ear region here as well. I'm probably going to have to resculpt it, and with the inside of the nose as well. And also some parts of the eyes. Which means if you know you're going to have to re-sculpt it completely, just mask it out so it's not going to project. It's only going to project what's not masked. That's really nice in ZBrush. Masking is a pretty universal thing. So if something is masked out, it's not going to be affected by anything, including projections as well. So let's go over projections. Let's see here. Projection is found under Tool, Subtool, and we have this little tab here called Project. Default settings are usually fine except for the blur. The blur will do exactly that. It will blur your projection. We don't want that because we spend a lot of time sculpting this up, particularly if you have a more final sculpt and it just blurs out the details. So set the blur to 0. I have this in my interface as well because I do this a lot. I do project all and I have blur. So what it's going to do is going to project whatever we have in the subtool active onto the current subtool. It's fairly simple to understand. So if we have this head here, it's going to project onto the new head. And simply just hit project. But before we do that, as I said, I just want to mask the mouth out. Because there is no way we're going to be able to salvage the inner regions here. We will definitely have to resculpt that region. So we can just mask it out right away. Just to save us the trouble. Nice. So just hit project alt. And now we just wait. So you see the region around the mouth here has been completely protected. And you see why we want to protect it. Because then this stuff happens. This just looks really nasty and we will definitely have to clean this up severely. For instance, we have a lot of triangulation here. It's not actual triangulation, it's just the low-res mesh. The topology is still perfectly clean. So I'm just going to smooth all of this out here. Because there is no shape here really. I can just resculpt all of this. So if you want to avoid this, you can pretty much just mask it out. I just want to leave this region here for you, and there are definitely other regions as well, which are going to be completely messed up, because there is no way it can project it accurately if the geometry isn't matching 100%. And we can just resculpt it afterwards. So when you do this kind of work, never take it up to 100%. Never take your sculpt up to 100%, the initial sculpt, because you will inevitably have to resculpt a lot of regions, which is terrible. Let's say you spend like so many hours on it and you're gonna have to just fix it afterwards or literally redo it. It's so painful. So take it up to a certain point and then you sculpt it properly, because now we have a foundation and then we can sculpt it properly. I'll also have to fix the lips here, like completely resculpt them, because first they need to be closed, and also the shape is really odd here. So just going over these regions here. So when I see the messiness here, I'm not surprised. I mean, this is just a part of the workflow. You just have to accept that you're gonna have a lot of these issues here. So a nice way to find very obvious mistakes in a model is, first you can just look on the inside here. And this sometimes works really well, because sometimes you just have like stuff shooting through the model like crazy. But another way is, which I was going to show you, is to mask by ambient occlusion. I'll show you what I mean. If you go under Tool, just disable this and disable this. Tool, all the way here. And then we go into Masking. And then we can mask by ambient occlusion. Ambient occlusion simply just means that stuff which is close together will be dark. So just wait until this is computed. And then we're going to apply a flat shader to this, so we can very clearly see the ambient occlusion. Actually, let's not do it on high poly version, because this is 2 million. It's pointless to do it on this high poly. We can go down quite a lot. So let's try something like 170 mask ambient occlusion, and now it's going to be substantially faster to compute ambient occlusion, because this is not going to be used for texturing. Right now it's currently only being used for troubleshooting. So there we go. So you can't really see it that well because there's so much shading baked into, well, the matte cap. So if we go here, change the matte cap to this guy, flat color, now we can clearly see the ambient occlusion. And it looks pretty good. I don't think there are any major faults in this model here, because we've been pretty good at cleaning up. But sometimes you just see black spikes in the model, particularly around the areas here. If we hadn't cleaned this up, you would clearly see like really black areas. So if it looks like this, you're in good shape. But if you just see these extremely black dots, then you just have to go in and clean them up. This is particularly useful for, I mean, a head is simple stuff, but this is particularly useful if you're doing a quadruped or doing really intricate models. Quadruped with tons of overlapping shapes and all that, really easy to get nasty shapes going. So just clear the mask by control dragging, and then we just change it back to the material you're using before. And at this point, I just save the model. Every time I've cleaned something up, I just save the model out. 10 and call it head cleanup. Because now I can go back to this and I just know what's happened here. Really handy, you can just add a little comment. And now we can do the same thing for the hair. This is the only thing we're going to do it for, because the shirt we're going to have to resculpt. That's just a fact. It was so rough initially, and we can't salvage anything from it. Maybe we can salvage like 10%, but then we're going to spend like half an hour trying to clean it up. So don't worry about that. Sometimes it's just a lot faster to resculpt it than it is to clean it up. So we're going to do the same thing with hair. Enable the hair. And enable the hair. This is probably going to project pretty well, because this was a straight up zero measure of it. So we do the same thing. We duplicate it up, or we subdivide it up. Probably going to just add 600,000 is more than enough for this. But we're not living in the past, so let's just bring it up to 2.6. This is acceptable. As long as our model is not like 30 million or 20 million, I mean 2.6 is totally fine. I would always just have an extra subdivision level so I can really get the sharpness I want from here. So do the same thing as before. Store morph target, And you can see the UI is starting to make sense now, because now I can just, store morph target, delete morph target, use the morph brush and all that. So if you have to do this all the time by going into menus, you're going to go mental. So just put stuff like morph target, switching and all that here. Very handy stuff. Then we create a layer, call it projection. I can't spell today. There we go, call it projection. And again, more fancy interface stuff. Go here, select the PA blur and to 0, and then we go to project all. Again, just make sure that, just make sure that you're under subtool and project if you don't have it in the menu here. Also, make sure that this model here is smooth enough. Currently, this is 0.5 mil polys. I'm just going to subdivide this once more, because currently you can see we're going to get all this little faceting going on here, and I'm going to have to smooth it out. So just add another level of subdivision. Then we can go to the clean model and just project. That's a pro tip when doing this. Don't alt tab out of ZBrush when doing this. ZBrush is a bit weird when it comes to that. Sometimes it just hangs up and freezes, and sometimes it can even crash. So when you're doing anything in ZBrush where it's computing, like it's a Dynamesh, the Summation Master, or a projection like this, just like get some coffee, take a little walk. Just don't touch ZBrush, because it can get very temperamental. So I'm just going to go over the model now and just subdivide stuff up. Subdivide this up. I don't have to subdivide the eyes because we're not going to sculpt them at all. We can, however, just hit the D key, which is going to enable just a smooth preview on it. It's essentially the same thing as hitting the tab key in Modo, hitting the 3 key in Maya. They were just going to look smooth, but you can't actually sculpt on it. And doing the same thing here. If you just hit the D key, it's just going to enable the preview. We actually want to do sculpt on this. So we need this to have a higher subdivision level. So there we go. That's pretty much it for the reprojection. Just to sum it up, it's very simple to do. And I know this might be a bit confusing in the beginning, but it's very simple to do. We have two meshes. We have, let's say we have the head here, and we have the other head. So we have two meshes. One has the low poly, is the low poly version, super clean, no sculpting at all. Another one has the nice sculpting, but it's dirty. It has bad topology, or not. It might not have any thoughts behind the topology at all, but it has all the shapes we need. So subdivide this model here up to the desired level, store a morph target, make a layer, and then reproject. Set the blur distance to 0 under subtool, project and blur, PA blur. We just project all blur amount. Set it to 0. Mask out regions you know are going to screw up. Like here, I just kept the eyes here because I just want to show you. But here, just blur or just mask out the eyes. And then hit project. And then you can use the morph brush to simply paint out the regions you don't want. Very nice and simple. Also keep in mind regarding layers, you can only sculpt on a layer if you're on, or edit the layer if you're on the top layer here. So make sure the record button is on, otherwise you're going to get messages saying that you can't sculpt on a layer. So you can see the difference if you just toggle this on and off between before sculpting and after sculpting. Sometimes, or before I knew about this method, I would just re-sculpt it because it wouldn't take that long to just re-sculpt it. I thought it would always get better the second time. But it turns out the sculpting you did the first time is actually not that bad. So you just want to keep as much as possible from it. And this is a really important part of of the ZBrush workflow. Learning to reproject efficiently is essential.